continue. A lot of people keeping an eye on the Houston Texans. What a jump they made last year. Their team reported yesterday, is C.J. Stroud the biggest threat to Patrick Mahomes in the AFC?
Negatory, Greeny. Listen, for me, I'm going to go with the brand, with the Blue Magic, right? A brand name. We can trust it. We can believe in it. And I'm going to believe in Patrick. I'm going to believe that anybody can beat Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, or Aaron Rodgers, because these are guys that I know in the face of that, they won't flinch. CJ doesn't know what he doesn't know right now, and he doesn't know what a tough burden that is to carry to go against Patrick Mahomes.
Okay. I think that's kind of a silly statement to make, quite honestly. Bucky Brooks came out and rated the top 10 rosters, and I believe the Texans were 5. I think it was, I forget who was 4th, but it was 49ers, Eagles, I forget who, and then I think maybe the Chiefs were 3, and I forget who was 4 was, and then there was the Ravens. And then the Texans. It might have been the Ravens at 4. But, and I just think that, it was the Detroit Lions were number 4. And to me, that speaks volumes, okay? Because I think that the Texans really do have an elite roster. And I think they have an elite defensive head coach to tie that defense together. And they have an elite offensive coordinator to tie the offense together. When you have those things, you are set up for massive success. Massive success. So I absolutely really do. Like, the more I think about it, yes, you want to, like, to some degree, you want to rely on maybe like the Joe Burrows, the Josh Allens, the Lamar Jacksons, because they do have the experience. Whether you want to say that they've had the lack of success for various reasons, that's fine. But they do have the experience. They have been there. They do know what it takes to win. They do know what it takes to play consistent elite football. Theoretically, you can make the argument that C.J. Stroud doesn't know that just yet because he hasn't done it yet, right? He has to play multiple seasons to be able to even prove that. I think he will, right? So I'm not doubting C.J. Stroud at all. But it will be interesting because since we haven't seen it yet, we don't know what C.J. Stroud looks like in the AFC Championship game against Patrick Mahomes in a 3-point game in the 4th quarter with 4 minutes to go, right? We don't know. I think he will step up and be great, and that moment won't be too small, won't be too big for him, but we don't know, right? Like, it is, by definition, pure speculation, whereas we know what Patrick Mahomes can do, right? We know what some of these other quarterbacks can do to step up in that moment. But I really think, and I've said this now many, many times, the Houston Texans remind me so much of the Eagles in 2022, right? This great roster, added some veteran leadership. They have a great young quarterback and a great offensive coordinator, and the Eagles had a great defensive coordinator, but we'll just make that D'Amico, make that the head coach, and boom, like you're just set up for legit, true success. So it's like, again, it's funny. We make these people wait so long to build them up, like a Lamar Jackson or a Josh Allen or a Joe Burrow, and then once they're built up, when we have another younger team or younger quarterback coming through the ranks, we're resistant to kind of give up what we just kind of took time to build up, like Lamar Jackson, and not give the credit to, say, C.J. Stroud and the Texans. And it's like, and usually we end up being late to that party because we're always like, well, let's see what Jordan Love can do. Let's see what C.J. Stroud can do. In a way, they did it to kind of Patrick Mahomes. Let's see what this Mahomes kid can actually do. And it's understandable to a degree, right? But I just think that, again, if they didn't have the roster that they have, and if they didn't, maybe even if they had the roster, but they didn't have the coaching. Like, I have pure confidence in D'Amico in that regard. The pure confidence in that defense humming along. And I got pure confidence in Bobby Slowick to be a top-level offensive coordinator. I think he's going to be leaving the Texans in a couple years and will be a head coach somewhere. So I think he's going to be wildly successful. I think he is a great offensive mind. And so when you have those things all tied together, right? When you have the check, you have the great quarterback, you have the great roster, you have the great defensive coach, you have the great offensive coach. It's like, what are we talking about here? All you do is just need health, right? All you do is need health, and you are set up to win and win big. The only way they don't is if CJ Stroud was like a one-hit wonder for this season. Like he just got lucky for whatever reason. The universe was on his side in that last season, and you know what? He's just really going to come back down to earth and prove to not be that good of a quarterback. I don't think that's going to be the case, but that's the only way this team doesn't have wild success. Or, again, cross your fingers, cluster injuries. But again, with injuries, you just have no idea, and I'm not going to make my, my analysis or opinion based off of injury potential, because this team is also young at all the right positions. So injury outside of some unfortunate situations, their risk for injury should be on the lower end as well. They're not some old team that's on the cusp of man, at any moment you guys can be banged up, like the Jets, for instance, which is why I think the Jets are a legitimate threat to say the Chiefs as well. But you have to lean more. If you had to pick one or the other, you're going to have to lean more towards the Texans because you can kind of say with the Jets, they are going to be incredibly injury prone. They are old. They may be this, big, gigantic, tank, but they are held together with duct tape and super glue. That's not the Texans. The Texans do lack some of the experience. That is probably their biggest question mark. They lack that true experience. Fortunate for them, they did get a crash course last season because they were also able to win a playoff game and for that first half play a close, tight game against the Ravens. So I think that, really helped them. And a lot of times when we see a team like this, like the Texans, who now start to have that level of success, they make the playoffs, but they lose. That's kind of how it happened to the Eagles. They made the playoffs, but they lost. They got smoked by Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They essentially had to face the their Ravens first round instead of second round. So they didn't get to kind of lick their chops and get, I don't want to say an easy first win, but just get that true experience of all right, this is playoff football. This is what it looks like. Let's go. The Eagles were also fortunate enough to already have a handful of veterans on that team that had won a Super Bowl in 2017. So that definitely helped them as well. But for the most part, that was a young team that did not have that true big game experience just yet, and especially from the coaching as well. The head coach of the Texans has been there, right? Not necessarily as a head coach, but he's been around the block once or twice. This team now, even adding a Diggs, has been around the block once or twice. CJ Stroud is no stranger to big games either. Maybe not 100% in the NFL, but obviously in college. So I'm really excited to see what the Texans will do. And I really think that they are going to be an incredibly hot team this season. And I think it's going to make a lot of Chiefs fans angry, right? I think throughout this season, there's the potential that a CJ Stroud and the Texans dominate the storylines. Again, just like the Eagles did in 2022. Nobody really saw the Eagles being what they were going to become in 2022. And a lot of people were angry that you heard it. There was a lot of jealousy saying, this is just a good roster. Jalen Hurts is not that good of a quarterback. How good is Sirianni actually? They were so resistant to that. And we can see some of the resistance already with the Texans saying that they're not actually a threat, picking the Bengals and the Jets to be a bigger threat to Mahomes and the Chiefs. And it's I don't really necessarily see the evidence for that. Joe Burrow hasn't even proven to be able to stay healthy. Aaron Rodgers hasn't played a meaningful football game in over a year, and the Jets haven't done anything in decades. So it's just why give the benefit of the doubt to those teams and not necessarily to the Texans? Always interesting how people's minds work, but if I was forced to make a decision right now, I would be leaning on the Texans for sure. But those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think? Do you think CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans are the biggest threat to Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of, and I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.